to the final episode of the Hallelujah Acres Gardening Guide. I'm Willie Murray, and I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about the things that worked and didn't work for us in the past year in our garden. A lot of the things that we did were testing ways to improve our main garden area, and that's where I'm standing right now. If you look behind me, you'll see that we've got cover crops holding the ground, our soil, protecting it from erosion, and there are places where we have some legumes in there to help add nitrogen to the soil. And they'll start doing that effectively in the spring as the weather warms up and they grow and bloom. They'll start fixing nitrogen, and we can till that in and improve the soil. Some other things that we did in this garden are reducing tillage, increasing organic matter, and using mulch to retain water in places that we needed to. So this garden is actually much more stable than it used to be, and the soil is much more amendable and tillable, and we have less problems with water ponding on the surface and causing dead spots where the plants that we're trying to grow there are suffocating. We can go over to the raised bed area of our garden and take a look at some things that we tried over here. In this area we have planted cabbages, and we did some segments where we showed covering them with the plastic in a low tunnel configuration. And this tunnel has worked very well for us. If you take a look at the cabbages we have here, I think it's pretty obvious that they're heading up now here in February, and they're doing much better than their counterparts in a bed that's just 2 beds down, where we have the same varieties of cabbages, but they've been unprotected from the cold weather and frost. And you can just see that they're quite a bit smaller in size. So we had the rope that we added here to the top to give stability to the hoops, and it did a great job. They're still standing well, but when we started having some wintry weather and gusty winds, it blew the plastic up, inflating it, and actually flipped the blocks right off over here on the side. You can see it just took them right off. So this is something that we'll need to plan for in the future, that if we know we've got some severe winds or high winds that are abnormal for us, we might need to add some additional weight on those by putting more blocks or sandbags. So there's a way that we can correct that. We also have been using the drip irrigation, and we found that to be very successful. In our main garden we use soaker hoses, and those did were a considerable improvement over the overhead irrigation that was here before. But we're going to make some further improvements to that this year by adding drip tape instead of using soaker hoses, and we're going to put on a timer system so that it can be operating on a regular schedule without all that manual maintenance. If we look back and we review some of the crops that we grew this year, one of the crops that was extremely successful for us was our peppers. And we grew a variety of peppers, but the predominant cultivar that we had was the California Belle, and those did extremely well. But we did have one issue, and that was that the fruit was so abundant on them that it caused a lot of them to be misshapen or cramped as growing in clusters. So one way we can improve on that is to continue to grow the same variety, but to thin out the fruits just like you would on apples or pears on trees, to help them grow larger and better shaped fruit, but less of them. We also grew several varieties of corn, and most of them produced extremely well, but we had a problem at our location here with earworms, and they did a lot of damage on the corns, but we did notice there was a difference in varieties. And the candy corn variety for us at our location seemed to be infested more heavily than other crops. So that's something we can plan for this year, is to avoid using candy corn, choose a different variety, and perhaps plant a little bit earlier to avoid the life cycle of the insects that are giving us trouble. We also used cucumbers in the garden. They're used quite a bit in our restaurant, and in the store they were really popular with our customers. But we found that when we grew transplants inside the greenhouse and then moved them outside, we had better success than when we direct seeded the plants in the ground with our seeder. And one of the issues with that may be the quality of our soil, but it also may be that the plants got a stronger start if we put them inside and gave them a little more supplementation than they get in the clay. So that's something that we'll probably try to continue to do, and maybe do more frequently this year, is have a regular cycle of starting transplants for succession planting. We can take a look at a couple other crops that we grew. And over here I have an example of the carrots and the sweet potatoes. The sweet potatoes, you can see these are quite large. And one of the issues we had is the location we chose to plant them. That row section of our garden happened to be an area that tends to hold a lot of water when we have heavy rains or if there's a problem with the irrigation. So those plants tended to produce just these enormous potatoes. And they're still usable, they're very edible and taste great, but if you're selling in a market, people would like to see something that's a little more uniform. So that's the reason why we might want to consider putting the sweet potatoes in a different place. If you take a look at the carrots we grew, I planted several varieties in the winter garden, and these all performed really well. But there are some things you might want to consider with the varieties. This particular one here, White Satin, you can see the size of the carrots. It's quite large and uniform. And these are a great carrot to grow in the cold weather. But I also planted some other varieties. This is a red carrot, and if you look in the catalogs, the color looks a little bit more red and less pink than these do. So in order to avoid disappointment, you may want to choose other varieties. I also grew an orange variety, and in comparison to the white, you can see what a difference there is in size. So this white variety definitely outperformed the other carrots. I also grew a last variety here, which is called Deep Purple, and this carrot is supposed to be purple through and through. And I'll just cut one of these right here that shows the darkest color. We'll see what it looks like inside. And you can see there's still quite a bit of orange in the core, but it is an attractive carrot. The difference is here, though, that this carrot is very slow to develop color, and it doesn't really show in the small carrots. As they get larger, the color gets deeper and eventually penetrates. So if you're looking for purple carrots, you may want to give them more time to grow or try planting them in the warmer time of year, because these carrots were all grown under the exact same conditions in the same soil and the same climate, weather conditions through the winter. But anyhow, so those are things that while you're planning your new garden season, you might want to take a look at what you did last year and find out what worked and what didn't work, and think about ways that you can be creative in making changes to make improvements in your garden. And that's it for the final episode of the Hallelujah Gardening Guide, and happy gardening!